What's up, guys? I'm Ryan Roberts here on your next episode of At Large Bid, All Things Bearcats. Tonight I'm joined by Neil Meyer, most well known for his work with the front office news, but also helps out the At Large Bid guys from time to time. Neil, welcome in, buddy.
Awesome. How are you, Ryan? I appreciate you hopping on here tonight. So, how are you doing today?
Good, man. Obviously, first year on the beat, still getting in a routine of things, getting to know people. So Neil and I got an opportunity to get to know each other down at the AAC tournament. So definitely good to catch up here and talk about some things Bearcat related.
Yeah, absolutely. And what's not exciting that's going on in Clifton right now? There's a lot of exciting things going on, and we'll start with today's announcement of the groundbreaking performance of the new indoor practice facility and health and wellness center. Ryan, just get your thoughts on that a little bit.
It's like John Cunningham said in our presser after, it's going to be state of the art, second to none. As far as a performance facility, it's going to be equipped with, the nutritional center. It's going to have different spaces for the athletes, health, wellness, mental health, pretty much anything and everything you can think that an athlete would need is going to be in there. And then you talk about the actual football facility where the 120-yard field's going to be. That's actually going to be complete in 2024. So that'll be the first phase, and then Performance Center 2025. Um, a long way, man. You're a recent grad of UC. Just talk about some of the things that you've seen during your time at UC from year one to where the Bearcats are now.
Yeah, man. So from year one to where we are now, it's been a substantial change. I mean, obviously, year one they're competing for the AAC championship game, but they fell to Memphis, I believe, if I remember right. And then you go two back-to-back seasons of AAC championship. You go undefeated. You get the college football playoff. You receive the invite to the Big 12. You accept the invite to the Big 12, and then now looking back on it here, short time after, I mean, you're getting all new practice facilities. You're getting a $134 million indoor practice facility and health and wellness center. And on top of it, this health center that's being built, it's 96,000 square feet. So it's going to be massive. It's going to be state of the art, as we mentioned, but it's been astronomical to see the changes. I mean, as you mentioned earlier, the indoor facility will be ready in 2024 with the health and wellness center being ready in the fall of 2025 roughly. But I mean, it's substantial heading into the Big 12. I mean, what John Cunningham has done since coming to the university in 2020, I mean, he's just done everything right. I mean, he's changed the program astronomically. He's put uh, this program to new heights at the University of Cincinnati, and he's continuing to raise the standards each and every day. I mean, you see what the impact of the Day One Ready Tour is doing as they make that transition to the Big 12 on July 1st. But then obviously you think about the actual official renderings that came out for this indoor practice facility. And at first, I think it was talked about maybe like $88 million range. And now all of a sudden you're sitting at $134 million practice facility and health and wellness center. So you kind of step back a little bit and you're like, wow, that's a huge upgrade. But it's something I know I specifically asked Mr. Cunningham today about. And I asked him, I asked if he looked at any schools within the Big 12, because obviously you mentioned we were down in Dallas. We got to check out TCU's campus. And I asked him if he looked at any of those campuses, indoor facilities, and all that aspects of in terms of when it came to designing this new facility. And obviously within the Big 12, for those who don't know, Texas just upgraded all their practice facilities and whatnot. I believe it was like an $85 million project. TCU has new facilities as well. So I asked him about it, and he said that they were going to create their own because Cincinnati is based on architectural design and landscaping. That's what Cincinnati is really mostly known for. They have a great architectural and design program here at the university. And he said he wanted to make it his own, and he wanted to make it stand out and pop when people hit the corner of Jefferson and Corey right there. So overall, I loved that response. And it's going to be a beautiful spot on campus. It's going to have a lot of people highlighting. You're going to see it from miles away. It's going to be an astronomical impact here as they make that transition to the Big 12.
Yeah, I think Coach Satterfield really hit on an important key. It's a little bit different when you're competing in the AAC and winning versus everyone has the same dudes that you have. So one thing that he mentioned in his press with us after was that, in order for Cincinnati to stay competitive and compete and get the type of recruits they want, this is a necessary change. Cincinnati was built on being gritty, these, kids with a chip on their shoulder. But at the same time, if you're wanting to take that to the next step, these are the type of investments that you have to make. And one thing that really stood out to me was a comment that, when he met with John Cunningham and Neville Pinto during his interview, they talked about the investment that Cincinnati's making into football and that program for the future of Cincinnati football. And I think it's just seen across all athletics. We talk about the Big 12 in general. The locker rooms for basketball are getting upgraded. Baseball stadium, all new turf. So the type of resources that are going to be provided going into the Big 12, I think are going to be key.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the main thing too, you hit the nail on the head there, that was one of the first things they talked about when they met with Coach Satterfield during the process of him being hired was, hey, this is the renderings of what we're going to be doing. This is a general idea of what the practice facility would look like. And it's substantial. I mean, it now puts them in competition to compete with these schools like Alabama, Georgia, Notre Dame, Clemson, the blue bloods of college football in terms of recruiting. Because let's be honest, there's only going to be a select few campuses now in all of college football with a more expensive and nicer practice facility than what's being built here in Cincinnati. So I know Coach Satterfield's really happy about it. John Cunningham joked that his lock screen for his phone is now the new practice facility rendering. So he's very excited to get that thing going and getting in there to work when it's done. But overall, I mean, it's a very positive thing. And heading into the Big 12, you have all the resources there. You're adding something super important within college athletics, and that's a mental health resources. We know how important mental health is in this world, in this society. So to see them really going above and beyond and taking that route and really making that a key impact in terms of the new upgrades and everything, that was something they really hit the nail on the head with, I guess we could say, is that they're really focused on the mental health and getting these student athletes that those kind of resources to when they need it. So I think that's huge. And overall, it's going to be substantial for the University of Cincinnati.
Yeah. A lot of people, a big topic during this transition of the Big 12 is, well, what about Nippert? Are we going to upgrade Nippert? And that was obviously asked to athletic director Cunningham, and he made a good point that when demand is where it's at for Cincinnati football, as where it is right now, you kind of control demand as well as on the secondary market. So any expansion in Nippert would definitely be a strategic move. And let's be honest, man, there's a lot of momentum with the University of Cincinnati across the board. They just recently announced the deal with BSN to outfit their athletes in Nike and Jordan. You were a part of some of those press conferences. Just talk about what you're hearing as far as Jordan and Nike, and what do you think the impact for recruiting will be?
Yeah, the impact's going to be phenomenal. I mean, once you see Jordan back on UC men's basketball jerseys and now women's basketball jerseys as well, the first thing you're going to think of when you see those jerseys is the Bob Huggins era and how tough those teams were. And you're going to think of guys like Kenyon Martin, Steve Logan, Kenny Satterfield. Like, you're going to think of all those guys. DeMar Johnson's another one of them. You're going to think of those guys who went on to play many years within the NBA and have such predominant careers. Kenyon Martin was the number 1 overall pick back after his freshman season. So, I mean, overall, that's a massive win for the University of Cincinnati. Everyone knows the backstory on the deal where they kind of bought out the deal with Under Armour back in 2020. And it's kind of been unique since then because they were still an Under Armour school for the past 3 seasons roughly since then, 2 seasons roughly. But they just recently announced the deal with BSN. For what people don't know is the Under Armour deal was through BSN as well. So it's similar grounds. They kind of know the groundwork. It's someone they're used to working with. But overall, it's a huge impact. I mean, football's going to Nike, and it's substantial going to the Big 12, and heading into a new conference, the Power 5 conference. You're going to need change, and I think it was the right move. Obviously, it's something many fans wanted for a while, and what can you not be more excited than seeing the Nike and the Jordan back together on uniforms? Obviously, Coach Satterfield's really happy to be wearing Nike. We've seen the Day One Ready tour with Coach Miller wearing his new Jordan apparel, and all the coaches like that. So overall, it's going to be huge come this season. And I think many fans are going to like it. But this is something I've talked with JT about multiple times. Is even before this deal was announced, you'd go to any Bearcat events, you're going to find somebody, at least one, that would be rocking a throwback jersey with the Jordan or Nike brand on it way before this deal even got done. And that's what makes this deal special.
Yeah, we joked earlier when we were at the press conference. I asked you, who do you think is more excited about this Jordan deal, Wes or the players and fans? And I think Wes might be the most excited about this move, given his ties in North Carolina and repping the Jordan brand during his time at Carolina.
Yeah, absolutely. I think they're all fired up for it, and it's going to be fun to watch for sure. And it's going to bring back a lot of memories. Just now picturing the first feeling of when they walk out there on the court for the first time in early November in new Jordan uniforms. The crowd's going to be rocking like they always do. So it's going to be exciting.
Well, and I think if you look at the rise of Houston basketball, a lot of it correlates with that switch to Jordan brand. So if you go back and look at when Houston really started to make their mark under Kelvin Sampson, it's when they started getting into Jordan brand. And I don't think people can underestimate the avenues that it opens on the AAU trail. Like, if you look under Mick, it wasn't very often that he was pulling in, a high-level kid off the EYBL circuit just because those kids were staying in Nike apparel. And so that's another advantage that Wes will have going for him, showing up to an EYBL event and, having rocking that Jordan logo on his chest. It just makes a big difference when you're talking to a kid. There was a interview with Jace Richardson the other day, top 50, 24 combo guard. And, he mentioned that it's cool seeing Cincinnati back in Jordan because that's what he knows Cincinnati as. He knows Cincinnati. It's the Bob Huggins teams with Kenya Martin, DeMar Johnson, Nick Van Exel. The list just goes on. We have to talk about the most recent signing, obviously a big signing, both literal and figuratively. Aziz Bandiago, 7-foot center out of Utah Valley, had 15 and 12 against the Bearcats. So obviously everyone should remember him very well from that NIT loss. What were your thoughts on the signing?
Yeah, that's a huge signing. I mean, anytime you can get a guy who's averaging 12 and 10 a night, is substantial. And heading into the Big 12, I mean, we're looking down at the roster. I mean, you add the addition of Bandago, then you bring in a guy like Jamil Reynolds at Temple, who we got a great up close and personal look at, not just when they came to UC, but they also down there at the AAC tournament. That's another big in there to go. So you bring in 2 bigs who are both 6'10" and 7 foot to go along with Victor Locken, who is 6'11", and Odi Oguama down there at about 6'10". And those are 4 solid bigs in there. And it might honestly be the tallest roster that UC has had in about 5-6 years since the Mick Cronin era, if you think about it. So it's very exciting to see you not only get a big time center, but you get a guy who's averaging 3 blocks a game. And I mean, if for any of those who have followed Bandago's career, I mean, this was a guy just playing 4 minutes per game roughly his freshman season. And then his sophomore season, he was averaging like 4 points a game, maybe like 5 rebounds. And then all of a sudden he just blew up in terms of his junior year under Mark Madsen before he left for California. So Mark Madsen's done a great job developing Aziz. So overall, it's two big time additions. And then you also got to talk the guys like CJ Fredericks and Simus Lukosius coming in from Butler in Kentucky. So you look back and this transfer portal class, like Wes Miller and his staff have done a tremendous job hitting the portal this offseason. I mean, it's never easy to replace your three top leading scorers, especially after you see a guy like David DeJulius and what he did for this program over his 3-year career. Then you see Landers Nolly declare for the NBA draft after his lone season in the red and black. But then you see Jeremiah Davenport transfer to Arkansas. So you're losing your top 3 scorers, but then you bring in 4 guys who are able to jump right in and make an immediate impact. So it's going to be fun this season at Fifth Third Arena.
Well, I think the biggest thing with the transfers that are coming in is the versatility that they have in positional versatility. You know, you look at a guy at Bandego, he could guard the 4 and 5 because of his length. If you want to make that switch, you know, Wes has talked about in the past, like he'd like to see Vic expand his range out to the mid-range, maybe even out to the 3-point line. If he's wanting Vic to work on that this summer, it makes it a little bit easier when you have a guy like Bandiego to erase any mistakes from defensive lapses. You know, there's been talk about roster construction. Obviously, you're bringing in 2 guys with 0 D1 experience with Day Thomas and Jizzle James. You kind of look at the roster and you're like, you know, do we need to, you know, go out and get a guy that can come in 10 to 15 minutes a game for experience? But you look at a guy like Simus Lukosius, he can handle that. You know, he can handle ball handling responsibilities as a big wing at 6'6". You've got CJ Frederick, you know, coming out of Cov Cath. He primarily played the point. So he's a guy that takes care of the ball, can also shoot, set his teammates up, really good passer. So I think the positional versatility with that group coming in is the biggest thing. And defensively, I mean, it can't be understated defensively what you can do with this group. You've got a lot of length on the wings with John Newman, Dan Skillings, Simus Lukosius. And then you add in a guy like Josh Reed. Nobody's talking about Josh Reed. And before his freshman season, there were people saying, you know, he's going to be 1,000-point scorer. No one's talking about him. So I think Wes will definitely have his work cut out for him with coming up with different rotations and seeing how it all meshes well. But I think he has the right pieces in place to make a run at the NCAA tournament this year.
Yeah, absolutely. And even back to that, we talk about guys like Jizzle James. You throw Rayvon Griffith in there, you're adding 2 top 100 prospects. I mean, we all know what Rayvon is capable of doing. And for those who haven't watched Jizzle James's performance, I think they just need to spend some time and do it because he just absolutely balled out at the Iverson Classic just a couple weeks ago. And you're bringing in 2 guys who are going to fight for minutes right away. We know what Rayvon's able to do. He's 6'7", can really shoot the ball, can really defend. He provides great length. He can do a lot of great things. And then Jizzle James is one of the top point guards in all of the country. And many people have taken notice of that after his performance at the Iverson Classic. But then you mentioned got all the experience on the wing, the length. I mean, John Newman was the team's arguably best defender before he went down with the knee injury last season. So, I mean, you also got to think they lost John Newman for the whole season just after 1 game last year. So getting him back, I mean, I know he's still waiting on the waiver and all that stuff, the clearance. So you still have to figure in the aspect, but if he can get the waiver, that's a huge impact for this team. But then you look down, I mean, we talk about Vic expanding his game outside a little bit. That's something Wes Miller has been wanting to do. But overall, it's going to be a fun time. I mean, Day Thomas, wow. I mean, if you haven't seen his film either, I mean, watch what he did at Kilgore Junior College. He was one of the nation's top transfers at one point. I think he was 3rd on the JUCO transfer list. So, I mean, these guys are going to come in and make an impact. It's going to be interesting to see who's going to be the starting 5 out there. I mean, it's not going to be like years past where you could kind of go into practice and you could kind of get a sense of feel of who that starting 5 would be. I mean, either point guard role right now is going to be open for just about anybody. I mean, we saw Michael Woods transfer to St. Bonaventure as well. So it's going to be interesting come this season. And honestly, I'm very excited for it. So you have the Big 12, you have the Jordan logo back for the first time. in what, 15 years roughly, 18 years.
I think 2008 was the last year they wore it. Pretty
So yeah,
sure.
14 years roughly, 15 years roughly.
Yeah.
So it's going to be exciting. Wes Miller and his staff built an absolute powerhouse of a roster. They knew they had to make some changes heading into the Big 12, and everyone knows the Big 12 is arguably the best basketball conference. And right now, they assembled a roster to where they could arguably go in there and compete and find themselves within the. This team could go in there and surprise people, and if they put it all together, they could really make a run up there with teams like Kansas, Oklahoma State, Baylor. Like, this is a team that's capable to finish within the top 4 or 5 of the Big 12. So, or might even surprise a lot of people and finish higher than that. But it's going to be a fun season, especially with all the powerhouses there within the Big 12. Obviously, we talk about the Big 12, the Bob Huggins era. I wonder what Bob Huggins' reaction is going to be when he comes. Now, whether they come to Cincinnati or we go there, not sure yet. But he sees the Jordan logo back on the Cincinnati jerseys again.
Yeah.
So it's going to be great. And I'm very curious to what his reaction will be when that time comes around.
Yeah. So the common theme with Big 12 basketball is you have to have a roster that has 7 or 8 starters. Like, if you look at the elite teams in the Big 12, they've got 7 or 8 guys that they come in knowing I might not start because that's what it takes in this league. And I think Cincinnati has a roster where they have 7 or 8 guys that could start, and you wouldn't be surprised with any sort of combination. Obviously, you're not going to have 6'10", 280 Jamil Reynolds playing the 3, but you kind of get the gist of the type of versatility they're going to have. And I think the biggest thing is Jamil Reynolds has always had a lot of potential, and the same with Aziz. You saw his breakout season this last year. A lot of people don't understand that the rise and emergence of Vic Locken and Odie are from the direct supervision of Mike Roberts, their big man coach, who's been an absolute key factor in their development. I think we'll see that continue this year with the other 2 bigs that are being added to the roster.
Yeah, absolutely. And Mike Roberts gets a lot of credit for the development of Odie Oguama and Victor Locken. So it's going to be very fun to see what he can be able to do with guys like Aziz, Jamil Reynolds. I mean, heck, if I remember, I think you and I actually talked after the Temple game here at Cincinnati when Jamil went off. Like, I think he went for 12 and 10, maybe 12 and 9.
Mm-hmm.
And we're caught talking after it. We're like, yeah, he's going to be a force. But it just, the Temple team was struggling at the time because that was the time where they were without their leading scorer in Khalif Battle. Damian Dunn went off for 30. And it was just a battle between Damian Dunn and Landers Nolly. But overall, like, Jamil Reynolds was a force to be reckoned with for Temple when he was out there not in foul trouble. He was out there on the court. Like, he provides a lot for the Bearcats there inside. So overall, I'm very excited for that big man core. And then you throw Sage Tolentino in there as well, who's a former Auburn commit before flipping to Cincinnati. So it's going to be a super fun time heading into the Big 12, and I'm very excited to see what the big men will actually be able to do.
Well, I think that's the biggest thing heading into next year prior to the transfer portal additions. You kind of felt decent about your guards, but you knew you had to get help in the front court just because of how physical the Big 12 is, especially inside. And I think they addressed that. When it comes to Jamil Reynolds, I can say I've stood next to him out in public while in Fort Worth for the tournament. He's every bit of 6'10", 280. The dude is absolutely huge.
We passed him today on campus actually, and
yeah,
he's every bit of that 6'10", 280. So he's going to be a big body in there, very physical guy. So it's going to be a fun time for those 2 guys down there in the paint.
Yeah, obviously Reynolds and Aziz do still both have to get a waiver. So hopefully the NCAA doesn't NCAA as they typically have in the past. But we've talked about the Big 12 move. We've kind of hit on the roster construction for basketball. Talked about the indoor practice facility and the momentum with that on the football side. I think the last thing that we really need to talk about that I think is key with all Bearcat athletics is the new partnership that Cincy Reigns, the Cincinnati Collective, has with Rheingeist Brewery. they released a mock-up of a new beer that'll be released in the fall of this year, Cincy Light. Neil, you were there for it. Just talk about what you heard and what you know about it.
Yeah, so first off, Brian Fox has done a tremendous job leading the charge of Cincy Reigns. Brian is a guy I've known for all my 3.5 years on the beat. He's always been friendly, engaging. He's one of the best guys out there, and he's doing a fantastic job leading this charge. And to get a partnership with a local Cincinnati brewery company and Rheingeist, I mean, that's huge, especially with how many people. I mean, we've seen it all on social media for the last 3-4 years of how cool would it be to have our own Cincinnati beer at games and whatnot. But it's fitting that it's a partnership with Rheingeist, because Rheingeist has been a partner with UC since 2013. So the new Cincy Light can, it's going to be new Cincy Light. It's a new light lager. It's going to be 4.2%, 110 calories, and it's going to be hitting the stores this fall. So right in time for the Big 12 kickoff. I think it's a great thing for these young student athletes to really benefit off of. Obviously, you have to be 21 years of age to purchase Cincy Light. Just have to throw that in there for legal reasons. But you think about it, and what's interesting is that when you talk about collectives partnering with, an example, a brewery, what people don't know is this can features a lot of different things. I mean, anytime you can get your NIL collective name right there on a beer can, as it will be on Cincy Light. I'm sure many people have seen the mock-up of the picture of the Cincy Light can. I know if you follow myself on Twitter or Ryan, you've seen the pictures. But that's huge. That's a huge substantial to get your NIL collective name right there on a can of a beer can, which, let's be honest, a lot of Bearcats fans are going to be drinking that beer heading to the Big 12. We know how wild tailgates can get. Yeah. We see it walking into games. It's going to be a fun time for the Bearcats fans, but what makes this can so special, in my opinion, was something that stood out to me was the design on the back of the can was a QR code. So people who don't know much about Cincy Reigns and what Brian Fox and the Cincy Reigns team is doing for this NIL collective is just take your phone, you zap the QR code on the back, and it'll take you right to the Cincy Reigns website. So it'll give you the option right there on the can to have you learn more about the NIL collective, which is huge. We know the impact NIL is having in college athletics. So I think that right there is huge. But what's even better is $2 from each can or each case of Cincy Light will be going towards the NIL collective. So it's a substantial amount of money that will be going towards Cincy Reigns and the NIL collective for these student athletes starting this fall. So I think it's huge. I think it's going to be a hit. I think it's a great idea to get the ball rolling with NIL. But I'm absolutely fired up personally for the Cincy Reigns team to see how this really partnership works out. I know we talked to CEO Adam Benkovich of Rheingeist, and for people who don't know, he is a former UC alum as well. So it was kind of like a no-brainer. They both said, like, hey, this is a partnership together. It could benefit both companies. And what's better than partnering with a big brewery like Rheingeist? I mean, for people who don't know that either, Rheingeist is the 23rd biggest craft brewery in all the country. So to have something like that right here in Cincinnati is special. And that's a pretty big fact. You're going to see the substantial amount of impact that Cincy Reigns will be able to bring for the University of Cincinnati, these student athletes. It's a huge partnership, in my opinion.
Well, and I think we all expect the Cincy Reigns partnership with Rheingeist to be a hit. You know, the running joke amongst kids is that, you know, hey, I'm just doing my part to recruit. I want 4 and 5 star recruits. I'm just doing my part by, you know, buying all this Cincy Light beer. But I think the biggest thing is that, you know, when numbers are released, we'll say in January, with how Ryan guys did throughout football and basketball season, and other brands and companies see the type of growth that company has had over, a 4 or 5 month span, that's going to open up other opportunities for partnerships, potentially for B Fox and that Cincy Reigns collective. And I mean, let's be honest, UC's either the only or one of 2 or 3 that actually has their collective partnered with something similar to a brewery. So I just think it's something that where UC is constantly trailblazing different avenues, just because they kind of have, to get to this point, they've had to kind of climb. Nothing's came easy to them. You look back at 2016, you think that the Big 12 is going to expand. Oklahoma and Texas shut it down, and UC stuck in the AAC for 7 more years. But, it's definitely been a long path. And I think people like, Larry and Rhonda Shakely and, the Valentines, these are all people who continue to invest in the university and athletics. And it's led to where we are today with the Big 12 and all this other exciting momentum.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's great that you mentioned Larry and Rhonda Shakely today. We got their thoughts on their initial reactions to the new practice facilities. Obviously, those were 2 of the big donors for the new indoor practice facility and whatnot. And Larry actually kind of joked. He goes, well, I didn't know what to expect. I thought it was just going to be a square box that they played football in, but it turns out it's going to be like an opera house. So
yeah,
you seemed like he was pretty fired up. I mean, it's going to be right there on a busy corner of campus, and it's really going to showcase, and it's going to stand out. It's going to draw a lot of recruits here to the University of Cincinnati, and it all starts with those lead donors, as you mentioned, and that's something Scott Satterfield even has mentioned within recruiting pitches. We heard him talk about it today when asked how early in the process do they show the recruits the new practice facility, and he said, as soon as they get here. So you can't thank Larry and his wife Rhonda for their donations enough for the University of Cincinnati, and then you have to thank all the other donors and the treasurers and the board of directors behind the scenes too as well, because what they're doing right now for the University of Cincinnati has been phenomenal.
Yeah, Neville Pinto, he's always said that he believes that athletics plays a huge role in the growth of a university and the education. If you're at a university where athletics are successful, your enrollment's constantly going up. We've seen UC have massive growth just over the last 5 to 10 years, and it's only going to get better. Going into the Big 12, as long as they stay on the trajectory that they're on now, things are going to continue to grow. Looking into the next couple months, let's just talk about some of the things that are coming up. Obviously, in June, kids are getting back on campus for workouts and basketball, as well as football. And then July, Big 12 Media Day, July 12th and 13th. I'm planning on going. We're going to hopefully Neil's down there with me so we can provide some coverage. Maybe do a pod while we're down there.
Yeah, absolutely. Still working on the details right now, but I'm going to try my best to be down there with you.
Yeah, and then kickoff Saturday, September 2nd. It's all real, man. Everything starts September 2nd as UC hosts Eastern Kentucky. And then obviously that next weekend, they travel to Pitt in their first real test under Scott Satterfield.
Yeah, it's gonna be a fun season to say the least. But September 2nd, it's a lot of fans are going to be excited for what Scott Satterfield and company are bringing, and it's going to be a fun season in my opinion.
I agree. Well, Neil, always good catching up with you, man. Appreciate the time you took out tonight to come on so we can talk about kind of the day and all the momentum around Cincinnati right now. We'll see you soon, buddy.
Yeah, absolutely. This was a blast. I appreciate you guys for coming on and talking.
All right. Have a good night, man.
Yep.